Good morning from Sydney lockdown. Hey, it's Stacey Ashley here, and gosh, I hope you're doing super well. If you're joining me live, I would love to know where are you working from today, because I think it's changed, certainly in Australia, for a lot of people really quickly again. If you're watching the recording, then drop something in the comments as well. I'd love to hear from you. So for me, the reason that I'm going live is, well, there's lots of reasons apart from that, I like to do it, but I'm not only in lockdown, I'm in self-isolation. So I'm not having contact with basically anyone most of the time. And I'm in self-isolation because I was noted as a close contact of someone who was infectious with COVID. I've had 3 negative tests, so all is good. I'm all fine. I've got no symptoms. I just need to follow the process. But what it means is I really miss people. And so one of the reasons for going live today is just to be able to say hello to a few people. And then the second one is, I guess it's really got me thinking, because I've been a week now in self-isolation, there are challenges to that. And so what are some of the tips and tricks that you have come up with? I'm going to share my own, but I would love to know, what are the ideas, what are the strategies that are working when you're in lockdown, when you've got, different variations of work from home, because work from home is here to stay, in lots of different forms. So the more that we can learn as leaders about how we can make it work and be really effective and still create, great teams and great productivity and great connection and great outcomes, then of course, everyone's going to be better off. So I would love to hear from you. What are your tips and tricks to be leading yourself and your team, work from home, lockdown, just, multi-site, whatever it is? I'd love to hear from you. So let me just check my stream, make sure it's coming through loud and clear, and I'd love to hear from you. Alrighty, yes, it looks like it's up, so that's amazing. I'm going to hide this banner so my team have a lovely clear recording. Okay, so pop your comments in. What's been your experience of leading during lockdown, and what's the big lesson for you, that's really worked, or perhaps is a lesson of, that needs to improve or change as we go forward. I was reading a really interesting article yesterday, which was about, the employee experience and the importance, that has now been placed on it more quickly than it would have been had we not had a pandemic. And that employee experience is going to be one of the big differentiators for organisations. And as leaders, clearly we are huge contributors to that employee experience component. And so that's why I'm asking the question, what are your tips and strategies? Hey, Trinsa, good morning. Routine is everything. I think that's such an important factor. People, when there's lots of change around, really do get out of routine quite quickly because the discipline kind of gets interrupted. So what I wanted to do this morning is to focus, I guess, on a variety of things that I've learned, that I've observed, that have been shared with me about, key lessons and also key strategies to keep you as whether you're a leader of self or your leadership portfolio is bigger and it includes others, and whether it's programs, whether it's teams, whether it's thought leadership, whatever it might be, whether it's industry leadership, I'd like to share some things with you that are going to be valuable, but, easy to implement as well, because I think that's important. It's great to have a good idea, but we need to be able to do something with it. And so what I'd like to hear from is, again, what have been your learnings, your lessons, your key tips, the strategies that have made the difference, whether it's supporting self, leading self, whether it's about leading your team, whether it's about productivity, whether it's about keeping balance, setting boundaries, whatever it might be. I'd just love to hear. So let me just reflect on a few of the things that I have learned even in the last week. And so for those who have just joined, thank you so much. I'm missing people so incredibly much. This is getting towards the end of week 4 of lockdown in Sydney. And on top of that, I've spent the last week in self-isolation. I've got another week to go. I'm not COVID positive. I've had 3 tests in a week and they've all come back negative, which is amazing. But I just need to follow the process. And on top of that, actually, my husband has just found out he's a close contact. So he's now in self-isolation as well. So our kids are kind of running the house, which is, I guess a good experience for them. Anyway, let me talk about the things that I have learned in the last week. And I'll pick up on the point that Trinsa made. Routine is really important and discipline is really important. One of the things that I have noticed in talking with leaders, particularly this year, it started last year, but particularly this year, is that people very quickly blur the line between this is my working time and this is my home time. And so what they end up with is being really busy and focused on work more of the time, even though they might not be traveling because they're working from home. So whether it's a lockdown or not, if you're working from home, one of the really big things that will impact your whole life is how you actually set and maintain your boundaries around when you're working and when you're not. And it's a discipline. Nobody else is going to do that for you. And so you need to figure out, what is the balance that you want to have between work and the rest of your life? And then how do you actually maintain it? How do you let other people know about it? And how do you make sure that for yourself, you basically stick to it? Of course, there will always be exceptions. There will be moments when there's a big project due or you've got a delivery or you need to support someone else. But that should be the exception, not the rule. And so what I've noticed is that work has been expanding over the last 12 or 18 months to fill the available space. And if you keep moving your boundaries, the space gets bigger, so you've got more work on. And people are getting overwhelmed with busyness. And they're also, because that work is expanding or the space is expanding, which work then fills, they don't have the downtime, the chill out time, the do something else, the re-energize, the refresh, all of those sorts of things. And so what that means is then that they're kind of setting themselves up for burnout. And so creating that discipline of when I work and when I don't work and making sure that you enforce it for yourself is really key to supporting yourself. And it also sets a great precedent or you're really role modeling for your team the importance of maintaining a really well integrated balance between your work and the rest of your life, no matter where you're working from and no matter what the sort of the situation or the circumstances are. So that's a really big one. And that kind of busyness is another, I guess, key. And so I would love to hear from you. Are these themes that you're seeing or that you've experienced yourself? Busyness. So the act of just being busy for the sake of being busy, as opposed to working on things that make a real difference, having intense focus for shorter periods of time. When we don't have, we don't have to travel to work, or there's a little bit more flexibility because we're not being seen coming to work, we're not being seen leaving work. What I'm noticing is that people are not, they're not looking after their time, I guess is what I would say. And so their time is perhaps going into things that don't have an impact, that don't make as much of a difference. And so they're working longer hours because they still need to get their important work done. But because there's not that discipline, there's not that set of boundaries, they're just being busy doing stuff. And we've always done that. But I think now what I'm seeing is that more of that is happening. And so what I would encourage you to do is to really think about what are the things that you absolutely need to do because they make an impact, they add value, and they're really important. And as a leader, that's what you should be focusing on. What are the things that only you can do where you make an input, an impact, where you make the difference, and you in some ways you clear the interference for the rest of your team to then be able to do, their really great stuff. And so getting clear on where is your time going and where does it need to be going, and then asking yourself the question, what is the most important thing I need to be doing right now? Because you're valuable. And so, you want to invest yourself wisely, but you also want to protect your time so that you've got time to re-energize, to refocus, to learn stuff, all of those sorts of things. And so that's the second thing. So the first one is, protect your boundaries around time. The second one is, don't just be busy. Actually work with intent and purpose on things that add value and get rid of the busyness. And you'll see I've got an article coming out in the next day or so, and I talk to some of these points. So I would love to know from you, are these things that you notice for yourself or others that are kind of creeping into your work practice or your leadership practice of maybe not always being clear about what you're focusing on and that it does actually make a difference? Okay, so the third thing I wanted to talk about today, as well as boundaries, as well as managing your busyness, is about space. The space to do your work, the space to lead, and this is really important. Again, when we're fluctuating between in the office, working from home, lockdown, all of those kind of variants, and lots of other things for different people depending on your particular situation. Making sure that you have the space, the right kind of space to do your work is really essential to your clarity of thought, your ability to actually find the things you need, to be able to do your work, and to, again, maintaining your balance and that sort of thing, and being efficient and effective. So efficiency is about doing things right, and effectiveness is about doing the right things. So if we want to maintain all of those sorts of things, we need to have the right space to operate in. And so there are three key spaces to think about. The first one is your physical space. And with work from home, of course, that changes and it's going to be different. So really thinking about your physical space, does your setup support you to be efficient and effective? Can you actually do your work? Do you have the right equipment? Have you got it set up in a way that, you can manage? And do you actually have, is it relatively decluttered? All of those sorts of things so you can focus. So I'd love to know, again, for you, is it a challenge to find a space and to get it set up, to support what you really need to do? So the first one about having the space to actually be efficient and effective is, and to add value in your role is the physical space. The second one is the calendar space. And this goes back and links to the busyness that I was talking about before, not just filling up your time with stuff and ticking off things on your to-do list, but actually working with intent and using your calendar as a way of managing that, planning out your time so that you know what you're going to work on, the difference it makes, and when you're going to do it. Of course, leave reactive time because things always come up that are important and you need to respond to. But if you don't have that intention and you haven't actually allocated time to do your important work, then what's to say that it's actually going to happen, right? And so if you want to be in control, and this is also about supporting your boundaries because, you've placed limits on your availability. So, again, the calendar is a great way to create space to do your important work. I'm just going to read this comment. Peter, thanks for joining me this morning. Let's have music. Okay, so Peter said it's human nature to survive and to adapt to constant change. To some degree, if you want to actually be able to thrive and to do well, and so yeah, it is learning, as you say, learning is such an important thing, and using the resources that you've got, your mind, your experience, your motivation, all the things that you can do for yourself give you incredible power. So back to the space to be able to lead and the space to be able to be efficient and effective in your role, no matter what it is. So firstly, the physical space. The second thing is the calendar space. And then the third one, of course, is mental space. Do you have the mental capacity and have you decluttered your brain sufficiently that you've actually got the space to think and create? Because if you don't, you're just trying to hold all these random thoughts all the time. And so your mind is full and it's very hard to actually focus on the important things. And so again, think about your mental space. Are you looking after yourself by not being too busy, not being too overwhelmed, not having 47 priority number ones when there should only be one priority number one? Do you create space to change your pace? We can't always work with intensity. The best ideas often happen when you're in the shower or you've gone out for a walk or something like that. So you've actually given yourself a break. And so I think it's such an important thing to make sure that you are actually doing that and creating that mental space, doing other things other than work, and looking after perhaps your family or that sort of thing. You have to make sure that you have some time that's about you, even if it's just chilling out. It might be about learning, it might be about meditation, it might be about exercise, but it might be about nothing at all. And that's what you need to have great mental clarity and mental space to be able to do what you need to do. So that's the second lesson. And I think there's going to be lots of evidence, if you were to Google it, about the importance of all of the things that I've talked about so far. So the first one was around, setting boundaries for your work. And thank you if you've just joined. I'd love to hear your comments and what your lessons and tips have been in terms of, how do we adapt to our changing work circumstances and living circumstances. I'm halfway through self-isolation, which is not my favorite thing because I'm a people person, and so I do miss people. One of the reasons that I'm going live today is just so I can have some connection. So we talked about boundaries, being really clear about those. We've talked about avoiding busyness, not just doing stuff because it's there, but actually focusing our efforts and our attention and our energy on the things that make a difference, so that we know that we're contributing in the best possible way. We have more impact. And I guess we're on purpose in a way. Our intention is actually to make a contribution. And that's a very powerful thing to, for you and to self-support as well. And then the third thing we talked about was, or I talked about actually, was creating the space. So whether you're working from home, whether you're in the office, whether you're in transit, whatever it is, that you have set yourself up as effectively as possible to support that physical space, calendar space, mental space, so you can be efficient, effective, have impact. What else is important? I think for me, I want to touch on the connection thing. These are not new themes. I'm just trying to encapsulate them. I feel like connection is key. But I also want to make a distinction. Being in lots of meetings doesn't equate to connection. I think that connection is really human to human. It's not just a work in progress meeting. And so, it's about when we meet people where they are, when we have genuine, care and interest in what's going on for them. It's when we bring some humanity into our interaction, and we can do that, of course, face to face, and we're learning to do that online. But I think it's such an important thing to recognize. And so, even I've spoken to a number of leaders, and they're like, yeah, we check in with our people all the time. We ask them, how are you? And I feel like that's not enough. How are you isn't specific enough, and it elicits a lot of those very auto kind of habitual responses. How are you? I'm fine. Did I learn anything from that response? No. So we need to be more specific with our interaction and really genuinely interested, rather than just asking these general kind of banal questions. Let's really connect. Let's really be interested. Let's really ask a genuine question that we want to know the answer to. Like, what's been the most challenging thing for you this week? Or, what's been the best thing that's happened today? Or, how are you how are you and your family coping with the current situation? Or ask them the question. So what's been the big lesson for them that they can share with others so others can benefit? So really connecting, and it's not about every single day or anything, but I think that we really need to make this distinction between I had a conversation or I was in a meeting to we had connection. I was very deliberate about wanting to invest in that connection with a colleague or my leader or my team members or my customers, because that is that's what's missing. So it's not just a conversation, it's actually getting really genuine and authentic and involved in it. So don't do it if you don't have that intent, but if you do, I really encourage you to do that. I think that's what people are missing. And so if you want to find out more about human connection, I'd recommend following Simone Heng, who talks on that topic a lot. And I'd also mention, I think I talked about customer experience as the big differentiator earlier, and a lovely colleague of mine was interviewed recently on the importance of the customer experience in the war for talent, Sarah Derry, so you might want to have a look at that as well. Okay, so connection is a big thing, and actually there was research that came out, in fact, last year, and I haven't looked at the current version of it, from Glint, which talked about second half of last year compared to 2019, the level of connection between teams had dropped by more than 30%, and the level of connection between teams and their leaders had dropped by more than 35%. Now, of course, earlier this year, certainly in Australia, we were kind of almost back to normal. It was pretty much business as usual, life as usual. And while we had little spot outbreaks of COVID, largely we were able to just get on with life. But of course, that's changed dramatically again. And I think it's really easy to fall into the assumption that everyone's fine, we've done it all before. It was much quicker for us to actually adapt and get into work from home scenarios and all of those things that we needed to do quite quickly this time because we've done it before. That doesn't mean that people feel connected. And so, again, think about, for you, what do you need in terms of connection? And for the people around you, peers, stakeholders, customers, team, what do they need? And if you don't know, ask them. And so it's really important that we take the lead as leaders in this human connection space. And so for me, I know that I need people. And so here I am trying to connect with people because it's such an important thing for me. I'm an extrovert and I get my energy from other people. And so I would love for you to share your comments because that really will help me out hugely. All right. What else did I want to share with you? Okay. So sleep. It seems obvious. Sleep is such an important factor, and we all have different needs around sleep. But if we're trying to support ourselves, if we want to be high performing, if we want to make our contribution, if we want to be able to support the people around us, whether that's at home or in a work sense, then sleep is such a big factor. We know that getting limited sleep over extended periods of time, which leads to sleep deprivation, severely impacts your ability to make good decisions, to think clearly, to react, all of those sorts of things. So sleep is such an important thing. And I must admit, I'm a little low on sleep at the moment. I've been getting texts from the Department of Health at all sorts of strange hours. And of course, every time that happens, my heart rate goes up. And mostly it happens really late at night. And so that has been impacting my sleep because then I think through the consequences of the text and what I need to do and all of that sort of thing. And so I'm a little sort of low on the sleep thing. So over the weekend, I'm going to make a really big effort to just be what I would kind of describe for myself as not lazy, but have a bit of a lie-in because I really want to get some good sleep. And to help with that, of course, I'm going to do a bit more exercise. I'm constrained, as many are, because I'm in not only lockdown, I'm in isolation. So when you are in lockdown, certainly in Australia, you still have the capacity to leave the house for exercise, with constraints and limits. But when you're in self-isolation, you're not allowed to do that. And so the only kind of exercise I can do is inside. And I love to be outside. It's one of the things that feeds my creativity. So that's been a real interesting thing for me as well. So exercise, because we know it's really good for you, just generally, but it also helps the sleep factor, which means that your decision-making, creativity, cognitive ability is being well supported. So I think, these are all common sense things, but we can forget to prioritize them when we feel like we need to look after everyone else, when we feel like we've got masses of priorities, when we feel overwhelmed with busy work, all of those sorts of things. So they're all very integrated and interrelated. And so the big message, I guess, is you need to actually exert your power over the situation. You need to take control of the things that you can. I can control when I go to bed. I can control how much exercise I do. I can control how I reach out to be connected with others. I can control when and how I kind of structure my work during the day. So these are all things that you can exert control over. And in a situation, a bigger situation where you don't have control, like we're in lockdown, it's really good to empower yourself to take control of the things that you can. Again, it creates a level of possibility, a level of feeling like you do have control, that you do have the ability to make some decisions that are relevant to you. And again, that's really important for your state of mind and your ability to keep going, because you're taking control of the elements that you can. And so you can make choices. And when you make choices, that could be, I choose to start work. I choose to focus intensely rather than, I've got to do that thing I don't like doing. All right. So reframe yourself and start to make choices. I choose to exercise inside the house, even though I have to, and I could go, I can only exercise inside the house. But me making the choice, I choose to do this kind of exercise inside the house. I'm now taking control, and I feel better for that in lots and lots of different ways. So, look, there's a myriad of other lessons and tips and strategies. And so I would love to hear yours, and I would love for you to share your comments because I think the more that we can support each other, the more that we can share best practice, the more that we can, just do the right thing for ourselves and each other. Of course, we're all leading, and, we want to, the world needs leadership. Let's just leave it there. It's such an important thing that we lead ourselves, that we role model leadership, and that we share what we know with the people around us, so that they can pick and choose the things that work for them and put them into their practice as well. So I'm going to wrap it up here, a little bit longer than I normally go live for, but I hope that there are some useful ideas there for you. And I'd encourage you to pick, one or two or three of those concepts and start to put them into practice, and please share them with the people around you. I think that it's such an important thing to equip people or remind people of the things that they can do for themselves, and to support and lead the people around them as well. And so I'm going to wrap it up there. Wish me well for the next week of self-isolation. And if you've got any questions, of course, pop those into the chat as well. And I'll keep an eye on that over the next couple of days and respond to you. I'm just picking up a comment from Peter. I understand social networking and telecommunication really help us to connect in these times, but don't you think this freedom is reaching out and communicating with another is one of the biggest reasons we're isolated right now? I think I agree with you, Peter. It's just a bit long for me to read now, but I think, yes, we need to reach out and communicate. If you need connection, then reach out to other people, because they're very, very willing. And I'm sure, like me, you've seen loads of posts with people offering, if you need someone to talk to, if you want help, all of those sorts of things are happening. So there's lots of people who are very, very open, to supporting. And I think that's an amazing thing. Sonia, great to hear, to have you watching. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to go because I've got a meeting to get to shortly, but I would love to hear your thoughts and comments. And I think I'm going to try and go live a little sooner than I normally would, because this has been great and I love sharing this time with you. So enjoy your day and weekend, and pop any questions or comments there for me to see, and I'll respond as soon as I can.